This is homework problem number 37 in section 3.4, and it's graphing a trigonometric function. We have cosine, and we have several things that are going on here. We have an amplitude right here. That's the -1/2. We have a frequency, which is this 2, but we're going to have to factor it out. And we have this 1/2 right here, but I don't like the way that's written. So let's look at, first of all, the formula that tells us about amplitude and frequency and phase shifts and things like that. And so we're looking at this right here. When we see the equation like this, y equals a times cosine, and then the b has been factored out, x minus h plus k. Here's our amplitude, our frequency, our horizontal shift, and our vertical shift. When I take this given equation and rewrite it so it's more in this format, we said it looks like this. So you'll notice I moved the 1/2 that was in the front, I moved it to the end so we can see, oh, that's the vertical shift. The amplitude is this 1/2, but it has a negative, so that's going to mean it's going to flip. I took the 2 that's here in front of the x and I factored it out of this argument. And so we ended up with 2 times the quantity x minus pi over 6. When you distribute back in the 2, you'll get that 2x minus pi over 3. So there's our frequency, and this is our horizontal shift. So we've got the amplitude is negative, which means it reflects over the x-axis, but it's 1/2, so that means that's how high and how low it goes, is up 1/2 units and down 1/2 units from the midline. The frequency is 2. So the period, if that's the frequency, remember we take 2 pi and divide it by the frequency, and that gives us our period. Our period is pi. And we have a horizontal shift to the right, pi over 6. And we have a vertical shift up 1/2 unit. So let's look at what we do. Well, first of all, I've got, this was the equation that was given in the textbook. This is the way I rewrote it. So I set up my axes where I have my period of pi. I have the 4 divisions of it. I have my amplitude written on here. And this is cosine, but since it's negative, instead of starting at the top for the amplitude and going down, we're going to start at the bottom of amplitude and go up, and we're going to make a cosine curve. So let's put the dots for that, and not the dots, but the oh, excuse me, I went a little too far there. Here we have our dots, where we've got the one at the amplitude, then we go up to the midline, above to the maximum, then to the midline, and then down to the minimum again. So this is a cosine curve that's been flipped, and it's flipped because it's negative. Now, this would just be if it was -1/2 cosine of x. But we have a horizontal shift and we have a vertical shift. I'm going to deal with the vertical shift first. So we're going to take each one of these points and move it up 1/2 unit and then over pi over 6. So here's the first unit. You see right here I moved it up 1/2 unit and over pi over 6. And so this blue dot is the new place where this dot moved to. I'm going to do that with each one of these. So then this next dot went up 1/2 unit and over pi over 6. The next one went up a unit and over pi over 6. And this next one went up a unit and over pi over 6. Oops. And then the last one went up a unit. Well, I didn't mean to do it that far. Up a unit and over pi over 6. Okay. Now that I have that, I can take all of these dark blue dots. These are our new ones that have the horizontal and vertical shift, and I put the curve in there. And there is the transformed curve. Now it's a little bit congested because it shows the parent function, well, sort of, the parent function with the amplitude put on it, and the which also included the flip, but it didn't. The red did not include the horizontal and vertical shift. The blue is the final version. So my real answer should only have the blue. So this is what it should look like. You'll notice also that I now have on my scale where this one here was at 0, but we added pi over 6. This one was pi over 4, but we added pi over 6 and got 5 pi over 12. So I had to do a little fraction work. This one here, let's see, that was pi over 4. This was pi over 2. I took pi over 2 and added pi over 6 and got 2 pi over 3. And so each one of those red places, I added pi over 6. So here was the original when we did the red one, its period was pi, and I added pi over 6, so I got 7 pi over 6. So I have the critical places. Remember, these are called the critical points. These are those ones where you had down at the amplitude, midline, maximum, midline, and there is a midline here, a midline that comes through right like this, because the midline also got moved up half a unit as well. Okay, so that's number 37.